I never imagined a simple janitor's job would lead to such an extraordinary turn of events. I had just finished mopping the floors in the lobby when the soft chime of my phone interrupted the silence. It was a message from Nathaniel Drake's assistant, requesting that I come to the executive office immediately. My heart raced. The idea of interacting with Nathaniel Drake, the CEO, was both thrilling and terrifying. Clara Evans. A voice called out as I walked through the marble-floored corridors of the executive wing. It was Sarah, Nathaniel's assistant. Her smile was polite, but there was a hint of curiosity in her eyes. "Yes, that's me," I replied, trying to steady my nerves. "I received a message to come here." "Right this way," she said, guiding me through the maze of glass-walled offices and polished surfaces. We reached a large, ornate door, and she knocked gently before opening it. "Mr. Drake will see you now." The room was breathtaking, a modern mix of minimalist design and luxurious accents. Nathaniel Drake was seated behind a sleek mahogany desk, his gaze focused on some documents. He looked up as I entered, his sharp features framed by dark hair and an air of authority. "Ms. Evans, please come in and have a seat," he said, his voice deep and commanding. He gestured toward a chair across from him. "Thank you, Mr. Drake," I said, taking the seat with a mix of apprehension and curiosity. Nathaniel leaned back, studying me with an intensity that made me feel both uncomfortable and exposed. "I wanted to speak with you personally because I've noticed something unique about you. You're always diligent and kind, traits that stand out in an environment like ours." I blinked, not quite sure where this conversation was heading. "Thank you, sir. I try my best." He nodded, seemingly satisfied with my response. "I've been observing how you handle yourself, and I'm impressed by your authenticity. So I've decided to extend an unusual invitation." "An invitation?" I echoed, my voice a mix of surprise and confusion. "Yes," Nathaniel said with a smile. "I'd like to give you a dress, a very expensive one, and invite you to an important negotiation meeting that's happening next week. It's a bit unconventional, but I believe your perspective could be invaluable." My mouth felt dry. "Why me, Mr. Drake? I'm just a janitor." Nathaniel's expression softened. "It's precisely because you are not part of the executive world that makes your insights valuable. Sometimes fresh perspectives are exactly what's needed to address underlying issues. Plus, I think you deserve a chance to see what else is out there." I sat there, trying to process his words. "I don't know what to say." He chuckled, sensing my confusion. "There's no need to say anything right now. Just consider it. I'll have Sarah provide you with the details about the dress and the meeting. If you choose to accept, I believe you'll find it an enlightening experience." As I left Nathaniel's office, Sarah handed me an envelope with the dress details and the invitation to the negotiation. "Mr. Drake has his own way of seeing potential in people," she said with a knowing smile. "Good luck, Clara." Walking back to the janitor's closet, I felt a whirlwind of emotions. The idea of wearing a designer dress and attending a high-stakes meeting felt like stepping into another world. But more than that, it was the validation of someone like Nathaniel Drake, seeing something in me that I hadn't fully recognized myself. As I stared at the envelope in my hand, I whispered to myself, "What have I gotten myself into?" The answer was unknown, but one thing was clear. This was the beginning of something far beyond the routine of my daily life. The envelope from Nathaniel Drake's office had felt like a weighty promise in my hand. Inside, the details about the dress and the upcoming negotiation meeting were neatly enclosed. The dress was from a high-end boutique, an elegant, deep red gown that seemed almost too beautiful to be real. A few days later, the day arrived for the fitting. I stood in the lobby of the boutique, feeling a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The boutique's interior was as luxurious as I had imagined, with its plush carpets and glistening chandeliers. A friendly saleswoman, named Jessica, greeted me with a warm smile. "Clara Evans, right? I'm Jessica. Mr. Drake's assistant called ahead and told us you'd be coming in for a fitting. she said, her tone both professional and welcoming. Yes, that's me, I said, trying to mask my nervousness. I'm here for the dress. Excellent. We've got everything prepared for you. Please follow me. Jessica led me to a private fitting room where the dress hung on a mannequin. As she unhooked it, I could hardly believe my eyes. The fabric was a rich silk, and the gown flowed gracefully, with intricate beadwork on the bodice. It's absolutely stunning, I breathed, feeling overwhelmed. Jessica nodded. It's one of our finest pieces. Let's get you into it, and we'll make sure it fits perfectly. I changed into the dress, and Jessica helped me adjust it. As I looked in the mirror, I hardly recognized myself. The gown clung to my figure in a way that made me feel elegant and sophisticated, far removed from my usual janitor's uniform. You look fantastic, Clara, Jessica said, adjusting a few final touches. Now let's work on the makeup and hair. The transformation continued as a stylist named Rachel entered. She had an easy charm and a skilled hand. Ready to get glammed up? She asked with a playful grin. I suppose so, I replied, still marveling at my reflection. Rachel's hands worked swiftly, applying makeup that accentuated my features without overwhelming them. You're in natural beauty, she said. I'm just here to enhance what's already there. I smiled at her compliment, though I felt like a different person entirely. Thank you, Rachel. I've never had anything like this done before. Rachel laughed softly. Well, you're in for a treat. It's not every day someone gets to attend a high-profile meeting looking like this. Nathaniel Drake must see something really special in you. Once Rachel was finished with my hair, I was left with a polished, elegant look that seemed almost too glamorous for the everyday world I was used to. Jessica and Rachel exchanged satisfied looks. You're all set, Clara, Jessica said, handing me a small box. This contains a pair of matching accessories. Mr. Drake thought you might like them. I took the box, opening it to reveal a delicate necklace and earrings. These are beautiful, I said, touched by the gesture. As I thanked them and left the boutique, I felt a surge of mixed emotions. The elegance of the dress and the meticulous makeover felt surreal, a stark contrast to my usual routine. The weight of the gown seemed to carry not just its own fabric, but a new set of expectations and possibilities. Walking through the city streets, I felt eyes turning towards me, and I couldn't help but feel self-conscious yet exhilarated. It was as if I had stepped into a world where anything was possible. I caught my reflection in a shop window and thought, is this really me? As the day of the negotiation approached, I could only hope that this transformation would bring more than just a change in appearance. It was a chance to prove that there was more to me than what met the eye. A chance to step beyond the shadows of the cleaning supplies and into the spotlight of opportunity. The day of the negotiation meeting arrived, and I could hardly contain my nervous excitement. The tall glass building where Nathaniel Drake's company was headquartered seemed to shimmer under the morning sun, its sleek facade reflecting the promise of new beginnings. As I entered the lobby, dressed in the elegant gown, I felt like an outsider stepping into a new world. The lobby was bustling with activity. Executives and investors, all dressed in sharp suits, moved with purpose. I approached the reception desk, where a well-dressed receptionist greeted me. "Good morning, Ms. Evans," she said, checking her list. "Mr. Drake is expecting you. Please follow me." As I walked through the corridors of the office, I felt the eyes of several staff members on me. Their whispers and glances were hard to ignore. Finally, I was led into the large conference room where the meeting would take place. The room was filled with an air of anticipation. Long, glossy tables surrounded by high-backed chairs were arranged meticulously. At the head of the table sat Nathaniel Drake, looking every bit the successful executive he was known to be. His sharp gaze softened when he saw me. "Clara, I'm glad you could make it," Nathaniel said, standing up to greet me. "Thank you for inviting me, Mr. Drake," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all. Please, take a seat," he said, gesturing to an empty chair. "We're just about to start." As I settled into my seat, the room's murmur gradually quieted. Investors and executives began taking their places. Nathaniel called the meeting to order with a commanding presence. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today," Nathaniel began. "We have a special guest with us who brings a unique perspective. Clara Evans, one of our dedicated staff members, will be joining us for today's discussion." There was a noticeable ripple of curiosity in the room. I tried to ignore the prying eyes and focus on the task ahead. Nathaniel motioned for me to join him at the front of the room. "I'll let Clara introduce herself and explain why she's here," Nathaniel said, his tone supportive. I took a deep breath and stood up, feeling every pair of eyes on me. "Hello, everyone. I'm Clara Evans. I've worked as a janitor at this company for several years. Nathaniel invited me here today because he believes that I might offer a different perspective on some of the challenges we're facing." There were a few murmurs of surprise, but I continued. "I've spent a lot of time observing how things work behind the scenes, and I've noticed several areas where we might improve efficiency and employee satisfaction." A middle-aged executive named Richard, known for his skepticism, raised an eyebrow. "Clara, with all due respect, your role is quite different from those of us in management. What makes you think your observations will be relevant to this meeting?" Nathaniel interjected, his voice firm. "Richard, Clara's insights come from a place of first-hand experience. Sometimes, it's the people closest to the daily operations who see things most clearly." I nodded in agreement. "Thank you, Mr. Drake. If I may, I'd like to share a few observations I've made. For instance, I've noticed that our waste management system is inefficient. The current setup not only creates more waste, but also impacts employee morale because it leads to increased workload." Another investor, a woman named Maria, leaned forward, intrigued. "That's an interesting point, Clara. Can you suggest any specific improvements?" "Certainly," I said, feeling more confident. "By optimizing our waste segregation and recycling processes, we could reduce overall waste and save costs. Additionally, improving the work environment for the staff, perhaps through better equipment and more regular feedback, could enhance productivity and job satisfaction." The room grew quiet as the investors and executives absorbed my points. Nathaniel's face displayed approval, and he nodded encouragingly. "Clara's observations highlight a crucial aspect of our operations that we might have overlooked," Nathaniel said. "Your insights are valuable, and they bring a fresh perspective to our strategy." Richard looked thoughtful. "I admit, I didn't expect such detailed observations. Clara, thank you for sharing. We'll definitely consider your suggestions." As the meeting progressed, the dynamics began to shift. Clara's perspectives sparked discussions that led to constructive debates and new ideas. It was clear that Nathaniel's unconventional decision was starting to bear fruit. As the meeting drew to a close, Nathaniel addressed the room one last time. "Thank you all for your contributions today. Clara, I appreciate your willingness to step out of your comfort zone and share your valuable insights." I felt a wave of relief and pride wash over me. The meeting had gone better than I had hoped. As I made my way back to my seat, Maria stopped me. "Clara, I'd love to discuss your suggestions further. Can we set up a time to talk more about your ideas?" I smiled, feeling a sense of accomplishment. "Absolutely, Maria. I'd be happy to." Nathaniel joined me as the room began to empty. "You did remarkably well today," he said. "I'm proud of how you handled yourself. Thank you for proving that sometimes the most unexpected voices bring the greatest insights." I thanked him, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. This meeting wasn't just about presenting ideas. It was about seizing an opportunity and showing that everyone's voice mattered. The aftermath of the negotiation meeting left me feeling a mix of triumph and trepidation. The meeting had gone well, but now the real challenge began, facing the skepticism and doubts from some of the company's top executives. I returned to my regular duties, but the buzz from the meeting followed me. Whispers and sidelong glances were hard to ignore. The elegant gown and makeup had been put away, and I was back in my janitorial uniform, scrubbing floors and emptying trash cans. Despite the ordinary routine, the extraordinary expectations weighed heavily on me. A few days after the meeting, I encountered Richard, the executive who had been particularly skeptical. I was cleaning the break room when he walked in, his expression serious. "Clara," he said, clearly wanting to address something. "Can we talk for a moment?" "Of course, Richard," I replied, setting aside my cleaning supplies. "What's on your mind?" Richard's tone was cautious. "I want to be clear. I respect what you did in the meeting. But the fact remains, your role is far removed from the strategic decisions we're making. How do you plan to handle the pushback from other executives?" I took a deep breath. "I understand your concerns, Richard. I've been reflecting on the feedback from the meeting, and I'm prepared to address any doubts that arise. I believe the ideas I presented can make a real difference." Richard nodded, though he still seemed doubtful. "It's not just about having good ideas. It's about implementing them and convincing others. There's a lot of resistance to change in this company. You'll need to be resilient and persistent." "I appreciate the advice," I said earnestly. "I'm prepared to work hard and prove that my perspective is valuable." As Richard left, I felt a renewed sense of determination. However, the challenges didn't end with him. I soon faced an even more daunting obstacle, an upcoming presentation to the executive board, which was critical for the approval of my suggestions. The day before the presentation, Nathaniel called me into his office. He looked concerned but supportive. "Clara, I know you've faced a lot of skepticism," Nathaniel said, offering me a reassuring smile. "How are you holding up?" "I'm doing my best, Mr. Drake," I replied. "But I'm worried about the presentation. The executives are tough, and I've heard they're resistant to change." Nathaniel leaned forward, his expression serious. "You've already proven that you have valuable insights. The presentation is your chance to show that your ideas can benefit the company in tangible ways. Focus on the results and the potential improvements." "I'll keep that in mind," I said, feeling a bit more confident. "Thank you for your support." "Remember," Nathaniel added, "the company needs to see the value in what you're proposing. Show them that these changes can lead to real improvements." The next day, I prepared for the presentation with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. As I entered the conference room, I could sense the palpable tension. The executive board was already seated, their expressions unreadable. I took my place at the front of the room, my presentation slides ready. Nathaniel introduced me, his voice full of encouragement. "Ladies and gentlemen, Clara Evans will now present her ideas on improving our operations. I encourage you to listen closely." I started the presentation, laying out my proposals with clarity and conviction. I highlighted the inefficiencies I had observed, supported by data and practical solutions. I noticed some executives nodding thoughtfully, while others remained skeptical. During the Q&A session, the board's questions came fast and sharp. "Clara, how do you plan to ensure that these changes will actually lead to cost savings?" asked Linda, the CFO. I responded confidently. "We've conducted a cost-benefit analysis, and the data shows that optimizing our waste management and improving staff conditions will lead to significant savings over time. Additionally, enhancing staff morale can boost productivity, which further contributes to financial gains." Another executive, James, was more critical. "But implementing these changes will require an upfront investment. How will we justify that expenditure?" I took a deep breath, remembering Nathaniel's advice. The initial investment is indeed necessary, but the long-term benefits far outweigh the costs. Improved efficiency and employee satisfaction will lead to reduced turnover and operational costs. The investment will pay off in the form of better performance and financial stability. The board seemed to be weighing my responses carefully. The discussion was intense, but Nathaniel's support and my preparation gave me strength. After the presentation, I returned to my office, exhausted but hopeful. Later that afternoon, Nathaniel stopped by my office. "You did an excellent job today," he said, his tone approving. "The board's response was mixed, but you presented your ideas well and handled their questions with poise." "Thank you, Mr. Drake," I said, feeling a wave of relief. "I hope my presentation can convince them of the value of my suggestions." "It will take time," Nathaniel said. "Change doesn't happen overnight, but you've made a strong case. Keep pushing forward." As Nathaniel left, I knew the road ahead would be challenging. The path to acceptance and change was fraught with obstacles, but I felt a renewed sense of resolve. Facing doubts and challenges was part of the journey, and I was determined to see it through. The days following the presentation were a whirlwind of activity. The board's feedback was mixed, but Nathaniel's faith in my abilities was unwavering. I found myself thrust into the role of a key player in implementing the changes I had proposed. As I settled into my new responsibilities, I was acutely aware of the challenge ahead. I had to shift from being the janitor to playing a significant role in shaping company policies. The transition was both exciting and daunting. One morning, I arrived early at the office, my heart racing with anticipation. I was greeted by Lisa, the head of human resources, who had been appointed to work with me on the changes. "Good morning, Clara," Lisa said, her tone warm but professional. "I've been looking forward to working with you on this project." "Good morning, Lisa," I replied. "I'm excited to get started, but I must admit, I'm a bit nervous." Lisa smiled reassuringly. "It's natural to feel that way. We're all here to support you. Let's start by reviewing the feedback from the board and outlining the steps we need to take." As we went through the feedback, it became clear that implementing the proposed changes would require significant coordination across departments. Lisa and I made a list of priorities, including improving waste management systems and enhancing employee engagement programs. Later that week, I was introduced to the team I'd be working closely with. During the team meeting, Nathaniel joined us to offer his support. "Clara," Nathaniel began, addressing the group, "I want to thank you all for your dedication to this project. Clara has some great ideas that we believe will significantly benefit the company. I encourage everyone to collaborate with her and support the implementation process." The team members nodded in agreement, though some still looked skeptical. After Nathaniel left, I took a deep breath and began discussing our action plan. "I know some of you might have reservations," I said, addressing the team, "but I'm here to ensure that these changes will be beneficial for everyone. Your input is invaluable, and I'm open to any suggestions or concerns you might have." The atmosphere was tense, but as we discussed the details, I started to see a shift. A few team members began to voice their concerns and ideas, and we worked together to address them. It was a collaborative effort, and slowly but surely, I started to feel a sense of camaraderie. One afternoon, while working late to finalize the new waste management protocols, I was approached by James, one of the executives who had been particularly critical of my proposals. "Clara," he said, his tone less formal than usual, "I've been reviewing the new protocols, and I have to admit, they're more comprehensive than I expected. You've put a lot of thought into this." "Thank you, James," I replied, surprised by his compliment. "I've been trying to address the concerns and find solutions that work for everyone." James nodded. "I appreciate that. I'm still not fully convinced, but seeing the effort you've put in makes me more willing to give it a chance. Let's see how things turn out." Encouraged by this small victory, I continued to push forward. Each day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities to make a positive impact. I worked closely with various departments to implement the changes, and slowly the improvements began to show results. During a staff meeting, Victoria, one of the senior executives who had been supportive from the start, approached me with a smile. "Clara, I've heard great things about the new employee engagement programs," she said. "The feedback from the staff has been very positive. It seems like your ideas are really making a difference." "I'm glad to hear that, Victoria," I said, feeling a sense of pride. "It's been a lot of hard work, but seeing the positive impact makes it worthwhile." Victoria nodded approvingly. Keep up the good work. Your dedication is paying off, and I think you're on the right path. The journey of embracing my new role was far from easy. There were still challenges to face and skepticism to overcome, but with each passing day, I grew more confident. The role I once thought was beyond my reach had become an opportunity to make a real difference. By the end of the month, the changes were beginning to take hold, and the company was starting to see the benefits. I felt a sense of accomplishment, knowing that my ideas were contributing to the company's success. As I left the office one evening, Nathaniel stopped me in the hallway. "Clara," he said with a genuine smile, "I just wanted to tell you that you're doing an outstanding job. Your dedication and hard work are truly inspiring." "Thank you, Mr. Drake," I said, feeling a mix of gratitude and determination. "I couldn't have done it without your support." Nathaniel's encouragement was a reminder of how far I had come. Embracing this new role had been a challenging journey, but it was one that had brought growth and opportunity. As I walked out of the building, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and excitement for the future. The day began like any other, with the usual hustle and bustle of the office, but something felt different. There was an air of anticipation, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was about to unfold. I was in the middle of a meeting with the IT department, discussing improvements to the company's data management system, when Lisa walked in with a solemn expression. "Clara, do you have a moment?" she asked, her voice tinged with urgency. "Of course, Lisa," I replied, feeling a pang of concern. "Is everything all right?" Lisa nodded, though her demeanor suggested otherwise. "We've received an unexpected visitor. A man named Richard Evans claims to have an urgent matter to discuss with you." The name struck me like a bolt of lightning. Evans was my estranged father's last name. My heart raced as I tried to process the implications. "I'll meet with him right away," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. Lisa led me to a private conference room where Richard Evans was waiting. He was an older man with graying hair and a weary expression that spoke of a life filled with hardship. As I walked in, he stood and extended his hand. "Clara Evans?" he asked, his voice tentative. "Yes, that's me," I replied, shaking his hand with a mix of apprehension and curiosity. "What brings you here?" Richard took a deep breath, his eyes searching mine for some sign of recognition. "I'm Richard Evans. I'm your father." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. I stared at him, struggling to reconcile the man before me with the distant memory of my father. "Why now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "After all these years?" Richard sighed, sitting down heavily. "I know it's sudden, and I'm not sure how to explain this. I've been following the recent developments at the company, and I discovered something that made me realize I needed to find you." I sat across from him, my mind racing. What could possibly be so important that you'd come here now? Richard reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. "This is a document I found among my old papers. It's related to the company's early days, and it mentions your grandfather. I believe there's a connection between our family and the company's history." I took the folder from him, my hands trembling. Inside were documents and photographs that dated back decades. My grandfather's name was indeed mentioned several times. "This," I said, looking up at Richard, "is about the company's early investments and development. It looks like my grandfather was involved in some capacity." Richard nodded. "Yes, he was. He had a stake in the company, but there were complications that led to a falling out. I've been trying to piece together what happened, and I thought you should know." I was overwhelmed by a swirl of emotions. The revelation that my family had been connected to the company all along was both shocking and intriguing. "I don't understand," I said, feeling a lump form in my throat. "Why didn't you ever reach out before?" Richard's eyes were filled with regret. "I made mistakes, Clara. After your mother left, I struggled and lost touch with everything, including you. I should have done more to make amends. This is my way of trying to make things right." The room fell into a heavy silence as I processed his words. I looked at the documents again, seeing the connections and the long-forgotten ties to my family. I need to think about this, I said finally, closing the folder. It's a lot to take in. Richard's face was etched with hope and sorrow. I understand. I just wanted to give you this information and hopefully find some way to reconnect. As I walked out of the conference room, I was met by Nathaniel, who had witnessed part of the encounter. His expression was one of concern. "Clara, everything okay?" he asked gently. I just found out that my father is connected to the company's history," I said, my voice shaking. "It's a lot to process." Nathaniel placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "If you need anything or want to talk, I'm here. We'll figure this out together." I nodded, grateful for his support. As I walked back to my office, my thoughts were a jumbled mess. The revelation from the past had opened a door to a new set of challenges and questions. The connection between my family and the company was a piece of a puzzle I had yet to fully understand. That evening, as I reviewed the documents Richard had given me, I couldn't shake the feeling that this revelation was just the beginning of a deeper journey. The history of my family and its link to the company had the potential to reshape everything I thought I knew about my past and my future. The days following the revelation were a whirlwind of emotions and decisions. I spent countless hours poring over the documents Richard Evans had provided, trying to piece together the fragmented history of my family and its connection to the company. The more I discovered, the clearer it became that my grandfather's involvement had been significant, yet overshadowed by personal and professional conflicts that led to estrangement. On the day of the final board meeting to discuss the company's future, I felt a mix of trepidation and resolve. Nathaniel had been a pillar of support, both professionally and personally, throughout this tumultuous period. His encouragement had been instrumental in helping me find clarity. I arrived at the boardroom early, the weight of the impending decisions hanging heavily over me. As I prepared my notes, Nathaniel walked in, his expression thoughtful. "Ready for today?" he asked, his voice calm and reassuring. "I think so," I replied, adjusting my papers. "It's been a lot to process, but I'm prepared to make my case." Nathaniel placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "Remember, this is your moment to shine. The changes you've suggested and the insights you've shared have already made a difference. Just speak from your heart." As the board members and investors took their seats, the room buzzed with a mix of anticipation and skepticism. The discussions had been intense in previous meetings, and today's agenda promised to be no different. Nathaniel started the meeting with a summary of the progress made and the positive impacts Clara's input had already achieved. He then handed the floor over to me. I stood up, took a deep breath, and began. "Thank you all for being here. I want to start by acknowledging the incredible support I've received from Nathaniel and the team. My recent discoveries about my family's connection to this company have been profound. They've given me a new perspective on our work and our mission." I glanced around the room, noting the curious expressions of the board members and investors. What's important to understand is that the legacy of my grandfather and the challenges he faced are not just historical footnotes. They remind us of the human aspect behind our business decisions. Our company is built on more than just profit. It's built on people, their dreams, and their struggles. There was a moment of silence as my words settled. Then Richard Evans stood up from the back of the room. His presence was both unexpected and fitting. "May I add something?" he asked, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Of course, Richard," Nathaniel responded, gesturing for him to speak. Richard cleared his throat. "I'm Richard Evans, Clara's father. I want to thank Clara for giving me the chance to reconnect and for uncovering the truths about our family's history. I regret the mistakes I made in the past, and I'm here to offer my full support to Clara and the company." A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. Richard's apology and support lent a new layer of depth to the meeting, underscoring the personal stakes involved. Clara's father's acknowledgement seemed to strike a chord with many. A board member, Ms. Collins, who had been critical of Clara's role, spoke up. I have to admit, this new perspective changes things. Clara's insights have highlighted areas we've been overlooking. Maybe we've been too focused on the bottom line and not enough on the human side of our business. Another board member, Mr. Harris, nodded in agreement. It's clear that Clara's contributions are more than just valuable. They're essential. I think we should seriously consider her recommendations and the changes she's proposed. With newfound support from both the board and investors, the meeting took a positive turn. The discussion shifted towards implementing the changes Clara had suggested, focusing on improving employee satisfaction and addressing inefficiencies. After the meeting, I found myself alone in the boardroom, reflecting on the events of the day. Nathaniel approached, a proud smile on his face. "You did it, Clara," he said warmly. "Today was a huge step forward for you and for the company." I smiled, feeling a sense of relief and accomplishment. "Thank you, Nathaniel. I couldn't have done it without your support. It feels like a new chapter is beginning, both for me and for the company." Nathaniel looked at me with genuine warmth. "I think it's more than a new chapter. It's a whole new book, and I'm glad to be a part of it." As we walked out of the boardroom together, I felt a renewed sense of hope and determination. The journey had been arduous, but it had led to redemption and new beginnings. With the support of those around me and the lessons learned from the past, I was ready to embrace the future and contribute to shaping a better, more empathetic company. The company's renewed focus on its people and the personal reconciliation with my father marked the beginning of a transformative period. As I stepped into this new chapter, I carried with me the hope that the changes we made would pave the way for a brighter and more inclusive future.